morning, class. Happy almost Halloween. So today I'm going to make what is called apple pie 63. It was the winner of the Pillsbury 1963 Bake Off. And it is a variation of apple pie. It is a dessert in squares that have cream cheese topping and caramel topping and chopped nuts on top of a traditional apple pie mixture on a flat crust, so it's cut into squares. So the first thing I did is I set the oven at 375 degrees to preheat, and we are going to make the caramel sauce first. The caramel sauce only has 2 ingredients. It has caramel candies. They come in little squares in a package like this. You unwrap them, and then it also has half and half. I've measured out 1/2 cup of half and half. That's the cream usually used in coffee. It is half cream and half milk, so it's not as heavy as a whipping cream, and has a little bit more milk fat in it than whole milk. So it's called half and half milk, half cream. So this is pretty simple. You just have to be careful not to burn the caramels. Caramels are caramelized sugar, so because they're caramelized sugar, they can burn pretty easily. So medium heat, melting, stirring occasionally to make sure they don't burn. And then we're just going to keep it on the stove top on low to keep it warm until we're ready to use it. So next I need to make the crust, but I realized my baking pans were a little bit too small. The baking sheet here was a little bit too big. So what I did is I took a piece of aluminum foil, I measured it, so I have the 15 to 10 dimensions, and I just folded up the tops to hold the pie in. So if you ever do make this, just make sure that you're watching your caramel. I'm leaving it because I need to continue with the video, but I would highly recommend that you finish the caramel before you get onto the crust. Caramel can burn very easily. Okay, so I fluffed up the flour. I'm going to spoon it into the cup. Add a little bit more than I need, so I have enough to fill it. When I scrape it up, it's all the way full. Give it a little tap to get the air out. I do this when I'm baking, especially making crust, to make sure it's done correctly. Then I just kind of scrape this off. There's our flour. I need 2.5 cups, so I'm going to make one more. And then I'm going to use a 1/2 cup of measuring cup to get the other 1/2 cup after I do the 2 cups. So I have my flour measured out, and my next ingredient is the sugar. So I have already measured the sugar. I'm just going to add 1/4 cup of sugar in here to my bowl. And then I'm looking at my recipe. Then I need the salt. So I have my salt, my sugar, and my flour. Those are my dry ingredients, and I am going to combine them very well, which means to get the spoon and stir it so they're mixed in very well. Don't want a clump of salt all of a sudden in your mouth because you haven't mixed it well. Okay. So the next thing I need to do is I need to cut in my butter. According to the recipe, I need a 1/2 cup of butter, which is 1 stick of butter. So I don't need to measure, it's already measured for me. Then I'm going to take my pastry cutter, and if you don't have a pastry cutter, you can use knives. So butter knives work. But as you cut it in, you want to get it coated with flour, or else it's just going to make a mess. If you want your crust to taste good, it's important when you cut in butter to mix it with the flour, not just cut the butter. So to complete the crust, I need a 1/4 cup of water, 1/4 cup of vegetable oil. I recommend a light oil that isn't nothing heavy like a olive oil. So this one is peanut oil I use. And an egg. So once I have it mixed well, then I'm just going to take my hands and form it into a ball and kind of work it in so it looks like dough. So once I have my dough, I'm just gonna hand press it into, I'm really gonna roll it out. I'm just gonna hand press it into my tray. So this is what it looks like when I'm done. I just kind of pressed it in smoothly. You really have to spread it out, so it takes a little bit of time, and you also need to make sure that you make a little bit of lip on the crust to make a crust on the edges of the foil. So the apples need to be peeled and sliced. Usually if you're going to do it by hand, you would cut the apples into slices and then you would peel off any of the peeling. So I'm going to use this. I just put the apple on here and it peels the apple for me. So this is an apple peeler. If you use an apple core, just be careful. It is sharp and then you do need to get the apple pieces out. So, and it also doesn't always work the way you want. So you have to be careful. Just kind of push down and sometimes tap it to get the apple to work. So if you do this, do be very careful. Then you get your apple slices, you may find that they have a little bit of seed or core. It didn't work perfectly, but it was better than doing it all by hand. So I just have to trim off the little ends, and then I'm just going to slice my apples. So to make my apple mixture, I need to add sugar. The recipe calls for a cup of sugar. I think that's probably sweeter than I want. I want a little taste a little tartness from the apples. So I'm going to add about 3/4 cups. So I put a little bit of sugar and cut that down. Then it calls for 1/3 cup of flour. The flour is added because it is going to thicken the apples. So as the apples cook, the liquid from the apples gets released. The flour mixes with them. It'll make kind of like a thick sauce. So it also calls for lemon peel. You can use the small little side of your cheese grater to get the lemon off, or you can use a lemon zester. I like the lemon zester. I think it's easier to use. Just make sure you don't get too far into the lemon. Just the yellow part. So I have my lemon zest. So I'm using this tool to juice my lemon. It does call, I think, 1 to 2 tablespoons or 2 tablespoons of lemon juice. I'm not going to measure it. I'm just going to look at it. It looks about right. The reason is I don't want to waste another lemon to get it exact, and it's not that important. It looks pretty close enough. You could always hand squeeze the lemon, just squeeze it into a bowl so you can get the seeds out if you don't have a hand juicer. So I'm gonna just pour this in here, I'm gonna mix it up. So we're got a spoon, just kind of mix it up, get the flour kind of mixed in pretty well so it doesn't, so it does make the sauce. And so I have my pie crust here. I'm just gonna pour this in here. And then I'm just gonna kind of spread it out on top. So I'm gonna decorate it by the topping. So I'm gonna add caramel and like tiger stripes. So I'm making them thin, and I'm gonna come back and add any extra that I have. One's in the corner, need a little bit. And that one looks a little thin, so I'm just gonna kind of take in. So our top cream cheese topping is gonna have egg and sugar, which is common in making cheesecake. So it's gonna have that little flavor like a cheesecake. So I have my mixer here, and I'm just going to beat it really good until it's nice and creamy. So once I've got my cream cheese mixture, then I just need to add it in between the little stripes that I made with the caramel. Best to do a real thin layer, and then if you have extra, come back. That way it ends up even. So I kind of make a little strip, and then I just kind of smooth it out with the back of the spoon. Then I just need to take nuts. It calls for chopped nuts. It gives you a third a cup of chopped nuts. You can use what you want. I'm not going to measure. I'm just going to put what I think, how many I want. So I'm just going to take and sprinkle these in here. I'm using pecans. Probably the original recipe called for walnuts, but I prefer the pecans, so I'm going to use them. Bakes in the oven. After it goes into the oven and bakes, then I let it cool, cut it into squares, and leftovers are refrigerated. This has cream cheese in it, egg, and so forth, so it does need to be refrigerated. So in checking to see it's done, I look at the cream cheese. It should have a little brownness to it. And I'm looking at the crust on the edge, making sure that it's cooked all the way. So I'm gonna let this cool, and then it can be sliced into squares.